Today we're going to continue on the subject of imperialism and look at indirect control, which occurred from 1848 to 1914. First I'll discuss the links and the importance of this area to the unit. So part of the curriculum that I discussed at the start of the year was an overview of the extent of imperial expansion by 1914 in Africa, Asia and the Pacific. If we want to understand the extent of imperialism, we need to understand how places were controlled and how countries spread their influence. The emphasis on this lesson will be on the methods, particularly how England controlled India, which was the biggest population that had a colony. Imperialism is a policy of extending a country's power and influence through colonization, use of military force or other means. Most commonly, indirect control was used to control a country that had a much greater population than the country that had invaded. Fundamental to understanding how imperialism actually occurs, we have to understand how these large populations are ruled. By the end of the lesson, I want you as students to develop an ability to analyze artifacts, and I want you to gain a deeper understanding of indirect control as a method for imperialism. And you should also be able to understand the extent of imperialism and how it was implemented in certain countries. So indirect rule is the control of a country through and by secondary rulers who are natives of that country. Frederick Lugard, who was the kind of head honcho in Nigeria, is considered the pioneer of indirect rule. So he's British, and he referred to the idea of indirect control as rule through and by the natives. So you would invade a country, usually with your superior technological or military power, and then you would control them by using the already established government and rulers of the country. So this meant you didn't have to set up your own government. It was much less costly. You didn't need many soldiers or administrators in that country. So you got the country's power, you got military power, men, resources from that country, but you didn't actually have to do all the work in controlling it. You used different type of rulers through this. So there was princes, kings. For example, in India, 1/3 of the land was ruled by princes. And when Britain was colonizing it, they kept those same princes to rule roughly 1/3 of the Indian population, which is about 100 million people. If these rulers gave them too much trouble, they could end up replacing them with their own British rulers. But if possible, they tried to keep Indians controlling and ruled the land through them. That's not to say that they were just puppets. These native Indians, it was a win-win for both parties. So the British got to control the Indians, and the people they ran through also got their own power. They got their wealth, they got to have soldiers. So it was a symbolic relationship. Both parties benefited. The largest application of indirect rule was in British Asia, so particularly India. So in the 1890s, fewer than 1,000 administrators of British citizens were ruling 300 million Indians. So you had 1,000 people controlling 300 million people, and that was all through indirect control. Even in India, 2/3 or more of the British troops were actually Indians. In other colonies, French protectorates in Morocco and Tunisia were ruled through Arab monarchs. In Laos, Cambodia and Vietnam, they used the local kings as their secondary control method. The artifact I have, which I can't actually show you because I'm not good with YouTube, is a 20th century Nigerian depiction of a British district officer. So it's a little boat they built, and it has a British officer in the front and Nigerian rulers in the back. So it's symbolic of them leading the way for the control. So they are on the same boat as him, but he's very clearly the one who directs where it goes. And that is my video so far.